This is the Big 8 Gridiron Report. And now your hosts, Drew Goodman and Dave Logan.
And welcome, everybody, to the Big 8 Gridiron Report. I'm Drew Goodman.
And I'm Dave Logan. The Big 8 Conference this past week, 4-3, not a bad week. Kansas State, of course, with another big victory. Nebraska did not play, but the team that a lot of folks are talking about, a team that won the Big 8 Conference last year, and so far, Drew, this year has not played very well. That's the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, they really have struggled early on. In fact, their only victory over the Stanford Cardinal, a fourth-down dive by Eric Bieniemy, got them that victory. If not for that, and it was very close, they might not have a victory at all this season. Iowa State against Minnesota this week, a game Jim Walden figured he could win. They lose two key players, and they lose late. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Let's check out the Big 8 standings right now, the overall standings, and look who's on top, K-State.
Gotta love that. The Kansas State Wildcats 2-0, followed by Nebraska. They didn't play, as we mentioned. Oklahoma with a big victory. Oklahoma State also a winner, and Iowa State a tough luck loser in Minneapolis.
Yeah, they were. Colorado 1-1-1. Missouri gets a big victory. They're 1-1, and Kansas, a much improved 1-2 football team.
Speaking of much improved football teams, the Well, as you take a look at the trivia question, in 1988, the Kansas State Wildcats honored a couple of their former players and retired their jersey numbers. And the question to Drew, name the players and also, if you will, give us the numbers.
A little sidebar in the trivia question. One of these guys is still playing in the NFL, and he's the only quarterback to wear a neck collar. I mean, he looks so ridiculous out there.
He's a pretty good player, too.
He's a very good player. He looks like a linebacker. Steve Grogan of the New England Patriots, who's, what, about 60 now? He's been there forever. No, Steve, I'm only kidding, Steve. They retired Grogan's number last year, and also, I believe, it's the former Packer quarterback, right? Lynn Dickey.
Very good. And the number.
Number 11. They wore the same number. I'm 2 for 2 today.
You are tough to fool. Kansas State got their second victory of the year this past Saturday as they trounced New Mexico State. The last time the Wildcats won back-to-back games was 1983. Let's take a look at what happened in Manhattan on Saturday against New Mexico State.
Don't look now, but the Kansas State Wildcats are starting to make some noise out on the plains of north-central Kansas. The Cats have a running back who reminds a lot of people of Mini Mac Herron. His name is Pat Jackson, and the seniors certainly gave New Mexico State all it wanted Saturday in Manhattan, scoring 4 touchdowns in the Wildcats' 45-point round.
Kansas State back, 1st and 10 at the New Mexico State 25-yard line. It was a 33-yard punt by Garrett Henson of the Aggies. Sprint draw right side to Jackson, 20-yard line, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Kansas State.
Jackson's first came on KSU's second possession, a 25-yard run. Then K-State's defense got in the act.
Punt is partially blocked, and it's picked up by Thomas Randolph, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Kansas State on a block punt.
Junior Roderick Green blocks a punt, which is snared out of the air by Thomas Randolph. And the freshman from Manhattan goes in for the score. New Mexico State, which has lost 20 straight games, still couldn't get on track. On the next series, the Wildcats' Brooks Barta recovers an Aggie fumble. That led to another Jackson TD and a 21-0 Kansas State lead.
Wildcats now at 1st and 20 from their own 46. 2 backs in the formation for Straw. Deep drop, throwing right sideline. Hernandez makes the catch. And Frank shoved out of bounds, but Hernandez has a first down at the Aggie 31. Jackson, flanker right. Hernandez split in left, and a slot left to Smith. Deep drop by Straw across the middle for Russ Campbell. He's got it inside the 15 down to the 14-yard line. 1st and 10, Kansas State.
Quarterback Carl Straw finished off a 28-point first quarter with a 14-yard run. And the route was in full swing.
Quarterback draw by Straw. 10-yard line, 5. Touchdown, Carl Straw on the quarterback draw.
Another freshman, Jamie Mendez, picks off an Aggie pass.
Rolling right is Lang. Pumping, now throwing the football, looking for Warren. It's intercepted by Kansas State. Jamie Mendez at the 30-yard line. Jamie Mendez, his first career interception. They'll option near side to Jackson. He's got hole, 10, 5, touchdown, Jackson untouched. It's a 12-yard touchdown run on the option by Pat Jackson, his 4th touchdown of the day.
Before the day was over, Jackson rushed for 156 yards and tied Heron's school record with 4 touchdowns. The Wildcats, behind Jackson's great effort, rang up their 2nd highest point total in school history, beating New Mexico State 52-7. It's the first time since 1982 that KSU has started the season 2-0.
A lot of firsts for Kansas State. They go 2-0 for the first time since 1982. The most points they have scored since they whooped up on the Sooners back in 1969. 42-0 at the half. Wildcats are back.
You mentioned 1982. That year they went 3-0, and also that was the year for their first ever bowl game. So maybe some good things happening in Manhattan.
Yeah, could be. When we come back, you ready to tingle a little bit? We have the hit of the week, the offensive and defensive players of the week in the Big 8. We'll come back. And welcome back to the Big 8 Gridiron Report, along with Dave Logan. I'm Drew Goodman. It is generally regarded, if you hit double figures in tackles as a defensive player, you've had a pretty good afternoon.
You bet.
You'd agree with that. Let me ask you a question, non-trivia question, so don't worry.
Good,
I saw you trembling for a moment. What's the most tackles you ever heard of in a game by an individual?
Well, I think anytime you get into the teens, you've had a pretty good performance. I remember, I think Jack Lambert at one point in one game had 21 or 22 tackles, but safe to say that doesn't happen many times.
He had some big fellas, Mean Joe Green, Ernie Holmes, keeping guards and tackles off him so he could roam. In any event, a University of Colorado sophomore inside linebacker hit that magic number, 20, this past weekend in the Buffalo's 23-22 loss to the University of Illinois. Greg Beekert, a sophomore, had 20 tackles, 19 of them solo jobs. In fact, 3 were for negative yardage, including this safety. It was the Buffalo's first safety since 1978. And the Buffs and Greg Beekert limited the Illini to 114 yards rushing, only 2.8 a carry. The Defensive Player of the Week in the Big 8, sophomore inside linebacker from the University of Colorado, Greg Beekert.
And the Offensive Player of the Week in the Big 8 Conference is senior tailback Patrick Jackson of Kansas State, who rushed for 156 yards as his school beat New Mexico State 52-7. Jackson averaged almost 8 yards per rush, had a long run of 25 yards, as you see, for a touchdown. His rushing total, the 13th best in Kansas State history, and the first time a Wildcat back had surpassed the 100-yard mark since the 1988 season. His 4 touchdowns, by the way, tied the mark set by Mac Heron in 1969 and Bill Butler in 1971. The Offensive Player of the Week in the Big 8 Conference is Kansas State senior tailback Patrick Jackson.
I remember Mac Heron, little package, good ball player.
He was something else. Returned kicks, he caught passes, he ran from scrimmage. I mean, he did everything and did it quite well, really, for the Wildcats.
The Oklahoma Sooners did about everything they could to the Pittsburgh Panthers this past week on offense, and they got it started in the right way. The first play from scrimmage offensively for the Sooners, Steve Collins fools everybody, goes back to pass, and he hooks up with Otis Taylor. Not the Otis Taylor, a different Otis Taylor.
But a good Otis Taylor.
That's right, a good Otis Taylor. And it goes for a 71-yard touchdown. Pittsburgh, needless to say, never recovered. Our Player of the Week, Steve Collins to Otis Taylor, touchdown, Sooners.
Time now for the Hit of the Week. And it's always wide receivers and running backs getting knocked out with the Hit of the Week, but we've had a lot of good response. And this week's Hit of the Week takes place in the Metrodome, Iowa State and Minnesota. The Golden Gophers with the ball, 2nd and 8 from their 32-yard line. A pass to Tingelhoff, and look at number 8, Jeff Bauer. Hits him, he catches the ball, does a flip, and loses the ball. And I'm sure Tingelhoff will remember Jeff Bauer for years to come. The Hit of the Week this week is in the Iowa State-Minnesota game, and Jeff Bauer is the one.
That is called, it's a cliche, but that is called laying the leather. Katie bar the door.
Yeah,
here comes Jeff Bauer.
That's right.
When we come back, it's Do we have a cliche for our prediction segment?
I'm leading the segment. That should suffice.
And that's first. So we'll come back and talk about that when we return.
Welcome back, and time now for our prediction segment. We do this at the end of every show, and I must tell you that last year, if you have not heard, I was drubbed by this guy and, of course, had to buy him dinner. But so far, in the early going of the Big 8 conference race, actually this season, last week, 5-2, and Drew, you were 4-3. So a substantial lead I have.
A one-game lead. If I may draw an analogy, that's kind of like the Atlanta Braves winning their first ball game of the year and claiming to be in first place breaking out the champagne bottles already.
Sour grapes, we all must learn how to lose.
A bit premature.
Well, let's start this week, and you'll have a chance to gain on the leader. I just enjoy this. I really do.
Yeah, sure you will, until Miami and you're buying me again. Iowa State in Iowa City to take on Iowa. Big clash, two bitter rivals.
Yeah, I think Iowa State, without Chris Peterson and Blaze Bryant, will find the going a bit tough in Iowa City, and I'll take Iowa.
I'll take Iowa also for the same reasons, and I'll warn you right now, after the first ball game, do not, because you have this one-game lead, just pick the same teams I do, and therefore feel comfortable that the one-game lead will stand up.
I know not what he's talking about.
Kansas State at Northern Illinois. It's my turn, right?
Yes.
I like K-State to go 3-0.
Okay, I like the Wildcats as well, and I'm not trying to pick the games you pick, but I do like Kansas State to get their third victory of the year. Oklahoma State at TCU. I am going to say, since it's my turn, I think TCU at home is going to be a tough ticket for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and I like the Horned Frogs.
I'll take the Cowboys.
Ooh, out in the limb he is. Colorado at Texas, that game Saturday evening in Austin, Texas, could be an interesting football game.
One thing's for sure, if Colorado doesn't play any better than they have, certainly in their last two ball games, I think the best performance of the year was actually against Tennessee, though they let it slide away defensively and got the tie, of course.
Are you going to pick?
They will get beat by the Longhorns, if not. So I will, I'll pick the Texas Longhorns.
Very good. I'm taking the Colorado Buffaloes, so we differ on another one. Kansas is idle, and I'm going to take Kansas. Just kidding.
I will take Kansas also. Glenn Mason always has them ready for that Saturday scrimmage when they are idle.
Missouri at Indiana, who do you like?
I'll be at that ball game.
Well, they don't care if you're going to be at the ball game. Who do you like?
I'm thinking, you know, I talk a little bit to get the thought going. I like Missouri.
I like Indiana. I think Indiana's a pretty good team. Bill Mallory likes to run the ball. Anthony Thompson is in the pros, but I think the Hoosiers a bit too much in Bloomington.
Okay, we differ on 3. This is terrific.
Scary is what it is.
Minnesota in Lincoln to take on the Cornhuskers. Mark it down, Cornhuskers.
I think Nebraska easily in that one. And finally, Tulsa at Oklahoma. The Sooners on an early roll.
Dave, an opportunity for you to pick an upset.
Thanks so very much. I'm taking the Sooners in Norman, and rather easily.
Very easily. I like Oklahoma to defeat Tulsa.
So we differ on 3. We've got a chance to have an interesting
week. Would you like to pick some other
week.
games? And
we'll do that a little bit later.
We'll do that a little bit later. That'll do it for this edition of the Big 8 Gridiron Report. Thank you very much for bearing with us.
Tolerating us.
Tolerating us once again. We'll see you next week. For Dave Logan, I'm Drew Goodman. Take care, everybody.